Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogans. Last month, I put together an episode sharing some different strategies that I use to teach art history. Some different ideas on how we can get kids more engaged when we are teaching art history. Now, it obviously helps if you're someone like me who's really excited about teaching it and really excited about teaching artists, introducing them, talking about artists' lives, everything that goes along with that, all of the incredible stories and facts that we can share about artists, their lives, the work that they create. And in that episode, I also shared some basics of how I like to teach art history, just what my instructional strategies look like, what I ask kids to do, the types of things that I want them to take away from my teaching. And everything in that episode seemed to go over pretty well. Had a lot of people asking me to share more ideas, which is difficult because I feel like I just did share all of my ideas. So I thought about it a little bit, and I wasn't exactly sure where we could go next. But then I realized, hey, Kyle Wood is out there. He's got great ideas. He's probably willing to share them. Okay, so if you listen to this podcast regularly, you probably know Kyle. He's a longtime friend of the show, elementary art teacher in the Chicago area. He's also the host of the Who Arted podcast, among many other things that he does. He always has a ton of great ideas for art history, so I invited him on the show today to share some of those ideas. Everything he's going to tell you about today is fun, it's creative, and I can't wait to dive into all of it with him. So let me bring him on now. And Kyle Wood is back on the show. Kyle, welcome back. So excited to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited and honored to be back. So thank you for putting up with me. I'm always a little bit shocked that someone's willing to speak with me, but honestly, things are going really well. Just like, it's the day after Halloween, which was absolutely miserable around here where I live, as is the tradition in Illinois.
Right. The weather has to be terrible. Otherwise, is it really Halloween?
Not in the Midwest. So like my kids got to deal with like an inch of snow as they're going around.
Wow.
But it was like so much fun and, delightful because my kids are at just that right age. So that's all good. And we have like way too much candy because I think only 2 people came to my house. Like we left the bowl out. And I don't know, my community's honest. Like I don't know how it was still full at like the end of the evening. So
wow.
The sign next to the bowl went from like take 1 or 2 to take 5 or 10, take a handful, and still.
And you still can't give it away. So maybe it was just terrible candy. What kind of candy was it?
Oh no, we get the good stuff. It was Reese's, Kit Kats, it was M&Ms. Like I always buy the good stuff because I need something to be able to sneak through the weeks leading up to Halloween,
for sure. No, I'm with you on that. So it's good. Yeah, my kids are a little too old for trick or treating now, and so they just don't bring the haul home. Like I'm used to like a huge haul of bags and bags of candy, and I don't get that anymore, which is probably good for me in the grand scheme of things, but it's disappointing to not have those big bags of candy coming home. Kind of sad, but anyway,
pro tip I just learned from my librarian: tell the kids what your favorite candy is. He says they bring in just bags of it every year.
That's smart.
I only have like 2 kids bringing me candy now, so it's rough.
Okay, though we do need to talk about more professional things. And as I said in the intro, we're looking for lots more art history ideas. I know you have lots of art history ideas, but before we get there, I would just love an update on what's been happening with you. Just what's going on with your classroom, what you've been doing professionally. Anything else? Like how are things for you?
Classroom's good. I'm always tweaking things in there, coming up with some different games and stuff like that. I was actually just, I don't know, like a week ago, time's lost all meaning to me, but I did the Illinois Art Ed Association's annual conference where I gave an art history presentation. It was called Ridiculous History, just all the stuff you missed in history class. And I am proud to say that I was not chased out of the room. So that for me is a marker of success.
I was actually talking to one of my friends who went to the IAEA conference, and she said that she was going to come see your presentation, but she couldn't even get in the room. So, congratulations on being popular and having a bunch of people want to listen to you. So that's a good thing. It's a sign that you've piqued some people's interest.
Yes, after nearly 40 years of life, I have finally figured out how to be popular in elementary school.
I love
late
it.
bloomer, but I'll take it.
Take the wins where you can get them. So, but yeah, like I mentioned, we want to bring some more art history ideas to everyone. And so, as I said in the intro, I thought to myself, who has great art history ideas? And it's Kyle Wood. So, I would love to just go through a few ideas that you're doing in your classroom that you and I have kind of talked about off air. But the first is the Art Imposter Challenge, having kids kind of reimagine a work of art in another artist's style. So, can you elaborate on that? Can you tell us about that project?
I mean, actually, I just did this on Halloween. I was telling my classes, like, we're going to dress up this artwork in a different style.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
But like, it really just gets back to like my core idea in teaching. I'm always focused on like understanding at that deeper level of like why things are. And I think that's because honestly, like growing up as a kid, I always felt deficient as an artist. It was not really my best subject. I know that's kind of an odd statement for someone who has dedicated their career to the arts. Yep. And actually, art history was a weak area of mine as well, because my understanding was always like really superficial. In classes, I just remember being told, like, imitate the look of this. Look at the Impressionists, here are some Q-tips, and make little dots of color, you know? But I didn't really, like, understand why. And so I'm always talking to kids about why things are the way they are, analyze it, look at it, respond to it. We're trying to interpret things as, this week in my entry routine, we're talking about sugar skulls, and we're talking about like, okay, we see these bright, bold colors. What does that signify? It's happy. It's on a skull. What does a skull typically signify? Well, death and sadness and spooky stuff. And so then it's like, well, what does that combination tell us about the attitudes in this celebration and all that? So every week in my classroom, we're talking about characteristics of different artworks and the stories behind them and why they look that way. And so I thought, like, let's try to get to that sort of deeper connection and response piece to it by having kids reimagine it. So like, it's remixing a work of art. You could describe it in lots of ways. I started doing this just referencing Among Us because people always like that kind of stuff. But it's really just trying to get kids to rethink what something could be. So, I put a collection of artworks up on the board. I had like the Mona Lisa, Hokusai's Great Wave, the Scream and stuff like that. And then I said, okay, I want you to reimagine this in a different style. we called the art imposter challenge, but
Mhm.
it's just applying different characteristics, different techniques to it. So, I had a student who did like the Mona Lisa, but like Mondrian style, you know?
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
like the Mondriana Lisa, and it's the,
That's a good pun. I like
primary
that.
colors and all that. And it worked. Or like, what would Starry Night look like if it were pop art? Or what would, cubist water lilies look like? All that sort of stuff. Very much
Yeah.
ripping off of Roy Lichtenstein's idea of remixing art stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's a good lesson. I think there's a lot of creativity that asks of students. There's a lot of creative thinking that goes into that. So I think that's a good one. And I guess kind of similar, you also have the Steal This Art Challenge, where kids are kind of making their own version of a famous work. And I guess, just I would love to hear you talk about similarities and differences there. But I'm also curious, like when you're doing the Steal This Art Challenge, like what kind of teaching do you need to do before that one? And like, how do you begin like introducing that concept to your students?
Well, I think a big part of it, I'm always talking to students about taking ideas and building off things and making it your own. You're pushing things further.
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes
Mm-hmm.
naturally to a lot of us who are in sort of choice-based classrooms, where you're focusing on generating ideas and coming up with your own twist on stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I would often introduce it with the classic Picasso quote that I think he actually stole from someone else. I think he stole it from like T.S. Eliot or something. But it was
Yes,
like
I believe.
good artists
I don't know
copy,
if
great artists steal.
Yes. I don't know if that's T.S. Eliot or I mean, it very well could be. I'm just saying the name escapes me. But yeah, he did that. And then I don't know if you've seen Banksy's take on that, where he stole the Picasso quote and like carved it into a rock and then just crossed out Picasso's name and wrote Banksy underneath it. It's spectacular.
It works on so many levels. But,
Yes.
it from what I've read, because I did try to hunt this down. It's first documented coming from a poet before him,
Mm-hmm.
a writer of some sort. But that's really going off on a tangent, and I'm going to try to keep the tangents to a minimum. I actually, that was one of the first sort of gamified things that I did in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
The Steal This Art Challenge, that came about when I was working a lot closely with a good friend of mine who's another art teacher. At that time, he was at an elementary school in my district. Now he's moved up to the middle school. But we introduced that challenge to both of our classes at the same time, saying,
Mm-hmm.
here's a collection of artworks, and we want you to think of your own version of it. And then like 2 weeks later, we compared the results.
Okay.
And that was a really cool experience and very motivating for students to try to think of creative ways to work with those prompts. And I still remember, it was probably like almost 10 years ago now, but the most brilliant thing I had a student create, probably, or among them, was she was looking at Hokusai's Great Wave, and she made a tea set out of it. And the tsunami wave was on the teapot pushing towards the spout.
Love
I
it.
just thought that was like such a perfect connection and reimagining of that subject and the medium of her choice and all of that. And so that's the kind of thing that I think is really fun, is kids start to bring in the areas where they feel comfortable or the areas that they're really interested in, but it still has that tie to the art history. And they think about like, what are the elements that I need to incorporate to make it recognizable as based on that, but not a copy of that. And so my Steal This Art Challenge is more about the individual student voice and choice and developing their unique viewpoint. And the art imposter is really more about trying to get them to understand other people's
Yeah, no, that's very cool, and I think that's a worthwhile goal for both of those lessons. Now I was just gonna tell you, I did need to look it up. I wish we had a bunch of money. I could just have a producer look these things up while we're conversing, but it is a T.S. Eliot quote originally. Then Picasso took it from him. So you were correct. So thank you for that. Now
thank you for giving me that validation. That's all I really need in life, is to hear the words, "You were correct."
Well, you got it right here. So no, we appreciate that. But I feel like we couldn't move on without figuring that out for sure. So we're in good shape now. Now I wanted you to also talk about the story that I had learned from you that I was not familiar with. The story of the fallen astronaut and artworks traveling into space. So can you tell us that story and also talk about how you've turned that into an art assignment?
Okay, so this is one that I didn't know about either. I've already confessed, like, my art history background was really weak prior to my podcast.
Yeah.
But in doing research for the podcast, I especially try to find fun facts, because I'm trying to do stuff that like would appeal to kids too. So I try to do some stuff that's just like, hey, did you know Michelangelo smelled? They had to peel his clothes off him. He never bathed, just like humanizing stuff. And so in doing that, sometimes, when I'm struggling for ideas, I'm just Googling, fun facts from art history and stuff that, whatever. And I think actually I've come across your article on AOE of like 10 fun facts or odd stories that includes the dude wwho used fireworks to communicate with aliens.
Yes. And he also like draws with gunpowder, and he likes his explosions. So
yeah. So after coming across that, I just thought, like, you know what? I'm just going to Google's going to find me something. So I put like art in space, and I thought there's probably going to be something with the ISS or, something has to have happened. And I came across, there have actually been like 2 things sent to the moon. One was Moon Museum that may or may not have actually made it there. And honestly, it's really disappointing looking at the pictures of it. It's like a tile that they etched with like a phallus and some other stuff. It was like 6 artists doing different stuff that's like, I can't show this to my class.
Yeah.
And then the one that I thought was just brilliant and a delightful story is Fallen Astronaut. And basically the short version of this story is an astronaut is at a dinner party where he meets an artist. It's 1971. He's going up on Apollo 15. He's going to go to the moon. And they're talking about what a monumental occasion this is. And just, the Neil Armstrong, it's one small step for a man, but one giant leap for mankind. And there should be something to sort of memorialize this monumental event. And they decided there should be literally a memorial on the moon. Okay. And the astronaut, what was his name? David Scott. He says, like, you know what? You make something, I'll smuggle it aboard. And so they work out the logistics. Like, it's got to be something durable. So it's got to be metal. It obviously can't be that big, so it, in real life, it's 3.5 inches, give or take. And so he made this abstracted human-like figure. And, one of the many controversies about this, Paul van Hooydonk, the artist who designed it, he wanted it to be standing upright as a symbol of all people. Okay. And it's this aluminum sculpture that, they wanted it to represent all people, not a specific man or woman or from a specific culture and all of that. So it's just a great human race type connection.
Okay. Yeah.
And then David Scott said, no, this should represent those who gave their lives in service of space travel. And so only one of them actually made it to the moon to install the piece. So guess who won out? David Scott laid him down as a fallen astronaut and put a little plaque there with the names of astronauts and cosmonauts who had died in service of the space industry. No word on whether Laika and Albert and the other animals were memorialized there, because I could not make out the text on the card in the photos that I've seen. But so like it's this bonkers fact that there's art on the moon. An astronaut just smuggled something aboard. And so what I do with my students is I start class by just saying, like, here's the background. Imagine you're the artist at the dinner party. You meet this astronaut. He's going to go to the moon. He's willing to take your artwork up there. What do you give him? And, you can draw it out a little bit by doing like the quick pair share. Like, what are the logistics you would need to work out?
Right.
What are the ideas that you can incorporate? Some of that brainstorming type stuff. And then I do it as a quick and easy oil pastel drawing, so I do the demo and guided drawing of like, okay, we're going to draw the surface of the moon and we're going to layer and blend a little bit. Now let's, I show the blue marble photo of the Earth, so that I can talk about, okay, we're going to get the light hitting the Earth here and the other parts receding into shadow of space and yada, yada, yada. And then they have most of class to draw what their monument would be. And then at the very end of class, I reveal the actual one. And we talk about like, well, why do you think he designed it this way? And, what do you think of that, comparing yours to his and all of that?
Yeah, I really like that idea. I think that's really cool. So good story, and great way for kids to kind of put something interesting together. So I like that a lot. So now, changing gears a little bit, you've been on before to talk about gamification and to talk about art history. And I know just sort of your mind is always churning. I know you're always trying new things. Like, do you have any new ideas for fun games or lessons that you've done recently, or anything that's working well in the classroom?
Like just, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, I debuted a new game for my classroom. I bought some of those dots that PE teachers use and they spread around the gym.
Oh, yeah.
And I basically just spread them around my classroom so that my class was like a giant board game. And then I spread out like different clue cards around the board. So like, teams roll my giant like foam dice and they move around the game board and they pick up clues from different artists. It's kind of a combination of like the game Clue and Guess Who. If I were being really specific, I would say it's probably very, very similar to a board game called Junior Detective, but kids are trying to figure out and solve a mystery. So the mystery I set up, I told them my nemesis, Dr. Meanie Bad Guy, is back and he has stolen another work of art, but he's a smart criminal. He's replaced it with a forgery. So we have to figure out which is the forgery in this collection. And all of the clue cards have some sort of characteristic of the artwork. So it'll say like, it's got at least one person in it. It was inspired by a window on a farmhouse. It's an American painting. It's, from 1930. And, by this point, I can see you've probably already.
I was going to say, I feel like I feel like I can pass the Junior Detective test at this point.
Yeah. So, it would be, in that case, Grant Wood's American Gothic. But I make things a little bit harder for my students than I do for you, because I would also include in there sort of a red herring, or basically I just say one of the artists is a liar. So you have to write down the clues that you got and whom you got them from, so that you can figure out which one is not true. So like one clue might say it's American, one clue might say it's Egyptian. And you
Oh,
have to figure out like, okay, which matches the other criteria, or you have to go around the board until you get to the clue card that says Picasso's a liar, you know?
oh yeah.
Um, I don't make it too hard for them,
Mm.
but I like to incorporate these different things. And by having one thing that is a lie that they have to figure out, it forces them to keep track of the clues. And then they're writing down artists' names, which I'm
Yeah.
hoping is going to help make a little bit
Well,
more of that stick.
and they're just paying closer attention to things too. It's not just like a speed run to see how many clues they can like collect and how quickly they can do it. So they probably need to think a little bit more. So I think that's good. So let me ask you, how long did you take to set all this up?
The setup for it's not that bad.
Okay.
Because you're just sprinkling the dots around. Creating the game took a little bit more time because
Yeah.
as I think by now, I like things that are needlessly complicated. So it wasn't just like I'm printing out text on a card. I also had to have like those color filters so it reveals the text. So like,
Yeah. Okay.
so I went on like Adobe and created like a card template that has like red lettering that just says like I'm writing a bunch of red text so that when this is passed through a filter you won't be able to see it anymore. And I just like copied and pasted that several times, so it's just this mess of red lines, and then I put some cyan lettering on top of that. And so then as I'm introducing the game, I also have an excuse to talk to students about, color theory and see this is why it works. So I can filter out this text. And when you have that stuff where they see like, oh, you know how to do that thing that I've seen as a gimmick in these other games.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, and you can do it too. And this is exactly how. And that's why you pay attention to color theory.
Mm-hmm.
I like to cram in as much as I can. That part of it took me a little bit longer, but
yeah. Well, I can see why, but no, I think that's all really good stuff. So, okay. I have one last question for you before you go. And it might be a little bit out there, but I'm curious. Do you have any just really big ideas for art history that you would love to do, but just because of logistics or cost or any of those million constraints that are on us as teachers, you don't think you'll ever be able to do? Like, what are your great big ideas? And would you like me to share mine while you're thinking of yours? Would that be helpful?
Any way that I can stall, yes.
Okay. So when I was teaching high school, I had a classroom that was not very wide, but it was very, very long. Like it was a giant rectangle. And what I always wanted to do was an art history timeline that went all the way around my very long room, where kids would just do paintings in the style of different artists. And then we hang them at the top of the walls, and they would just like circle the room in chronological order. And so like the first year, you could get however many different paintings, and you hang them up just sort of randomly around the room where they might fit on an art history timeline. And then every year from there, you would fill in a few more and just kind of rearrange them so they're still in chronological order. And then after 2 decades or so, like we would have a comprehensive art history timeline going all the way around the room. But for a lot of obvious reasons, that really never got up off the ground. I never really followed through with that. I thought it would be so amazing, but there's just so many reasons not to do it, so it really never came to fruition. But I don't know, what about you? Do you have any grand ideas, any master plans that may or may not actually happen?
Well, first off, I love that idea, and I think somebody needs to do that.
Well, I was going to say, I still love the idea. It's just, it's not realistic.
It's not, but just to add one more element of unrealism to it, I would love to see a version of that is like, how we've got feeder schools. I would love to see grouped with artists who influenced other artists. So you see that development of ideas through the artworks.
That would be really cool. Yep.
But I guess if I'm thinking about like what I would like to do, like honestly, I love my job. I love what I do. I just wish I were good at it. You know, my grand ideas are just like a better version of what I do. Like
fair.
I make, you know, a podcast about art history. I would really love, like, the whole reason I actually started my podcast. My podcast, I started with the idea that I wanted to teach students how to share their ideas. And like, you can't teach a medium until you've, you know, experienced it yourself.
Right.
So it was like a pilot program just to learn the medium so I could teach it to students. What I would love is to help students create 5 to 10 minute podcasts about the art that they love. Get students to do that and talking about their artworks, maybe, you know, responding, having conversations, having dialogues, and just putting together a massive database of like just hundreds of children having conversations, sharing fun facts and their insights and connections to different artists and artworks. And then, you know, finding a programmer who could make that a sortable database, like put filters on, like, okay, I want to find women artists, or I want to find 20th century artists, or I want to find, you know, Japanese artists, or whatever it might be. That would be my dream scenario. Because I realized that I do not have the time to teach myself to code to that level.
Right. Yeah.
Like I just can't. If I had the time, I would love to do that, because I am a huge tech enthusiast. I really used to like making my own websites and doing JavaScript and ActionScript and all that stuff that really shows just how old I am. But I can't do that anymore. And I would love to have that kind of thing. But, you know, I don't have 20 different podcast rooms set up that are all soundproofed with mics and, you know, like I don't
just
have
everything you would need to make that come to fruition. It's not there.
Yeah, and not all the kids have the same enthusiasm as like my top 10%, you know. So that would be it. Or, you know, I try to share my lesson plans with a lot of people. I would love to get a bigger database of that stuff. I know, like, basically, I wish I could be a one-man AOEU and just have like all that stuff ready to go. But like, you know, I'm not as good as your entire crew of people that does this full time.
I was going to say there's a lot more than one person putting all this stuff together for sure. So.
Yeah, but like I say, my big dreams would be doing that kind of stuff. You know, trying to get resources out to people, share my games, and you know, stuff like that.
No, I think all that's cool. So cool. All right. Well, Kyle, thank you for sharing your hopes and dreams with us, and also all of your most recent art history ideas. I know that's something people have been asking for, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share more of what you're doing. I always love talking to you, and hopefully people will take some things from this episode and, like you said, put them to use in their classroom. So thank you for all of that.
Oh, it's a pleasure and a privilege, as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to Kyle for coming on the show. Everyone who is looking for more art history ideas, I hope you found some good takeaways, some things to bring to your classroom, some fun ideas to engage your students. So make sure you find Kyle online. Make sure you check out the Who Arted podcast. And we'll also put together a bunch of links for you to find more of Kyle's stuff, to find more art history ideas, and hopefully a bunch of stuff that you can take back to your own classroom and make your art history teaching even more engaging for your students. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you, as always, for listening. One quick reminder before we go. As we talked about last week, we would love for you to check out AOEU's Instagram, especially if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, on Tuesday the 14th. Amanda is going to be taking over the AOEU Instagram page. Make sure you check it out because we have some fun plans that she and I will be doing while we are in New York City. We have a big interview and a very special announcement coming, so keep an eye out on our social media for that. All right, thank you as always for listening, like I said, and we will be back next Tuesday with another episode.